Seattle was drowning in rain that night, the kind that seemed to wash the edges off buildings and smear the city lights into watercolor. But I, Emma Hart, 38, owner of Glasshouse Florals, carried my own little pocket of warmth. In my hands, a small cake, frosted smooth, its swirled script curling across the top. Happy 15th anniversary, my love. I wore a beige knit dress, but underneath was something Daniel had never seen me in before. Black lace lingerie, delicate and daring, meant for a private celebration. Tonight was supposed to be sweet, and then a little dangerous. The kind of anniversary that rekindles old sparks and makes you remember exactly why you fell in love. The front door clicked open, my keys twisting easily in the lock. My heels tapped softly against the hardwood. I didn't turn on the hallway lights. I wanted the glow from our bedroom to be the reveal. I wanted to see Daniel's face, my husband of 15 years, when I walked in with cake, candles, and the promise of the night ahead. I pushed open the bedroom door. The light was already on. Daniel, 42, sharp-suited attorney who'd once sworn before God to stand by me, was pinning Sophie Bennett against the wall. Sophie, 29, my best friend and part-time operations manager at the shop, wore a champagne silk dress that had slipped low on one shoulder, the strap of her bra a thread of white lace poised on the brink of falling. Daniel's shirt was undone 3 buttons down, his hand gripping her waist in the way I thought was reserved for me. Sophie's head was tilted back, her lips parted, her skin flushed in a way I knew too well. His voice was low and rough. God, you taste just like that wine we had in Napa. Her laugh was a soft hum, intimate and hot enough to steam glass. And you still smell like her cologne, she said, eyes half closed. The smell of rain on my coat mixed with the musky heat in the room. My fingers clenched around the cake box. They trembled. And then, thud! The box slipped. The cake rolled, hit the hardwood, and split. Frosting splattered across Sophie's white heels, leaving a thick, suggestive smear. Daniel jerked back, startled, while Sophie turned toward me with the slow, deliberate grace of someone walking into the spotlight. She gasped. A performance, I realized instantly, too breathless, too staged, her eyes widening just enough to sell the act. Emma. Oh my God, I didn't think you'd be home yet. Then she smiled faintly, as if correcting herself. I guess you weren't supposed to see this tonight. Not supposed to see it? The words lodged in my chest like a splinter. I kept my voice low, almost eerily calm. Number, I think I was supposed to see it. Daniel stepped forward, fumbling with his shirt buttons. Emma, listen, this isn't... I'm not listening, I cut him off. My voice sounded like it could cut glass. Sophie tilted her head, eyes running over me, my damp hair, my dress still clinging to the shape of my lingerie underneath. She smiled wider, but it wasn't kind. Emma, let's be adults here. We're all grown-ups, aren't we? That word adults made me laugh. Not out of humor, but disbelief. Adults? This is what adults do in my bedroom on my anniversary? Daniel held up his hands. It just happened. We didn't plan... I turned to Sophie, my eyes raking over her. You wore lingerie under your dress to a client's party this afternoon, and that just happened? Her lips curled. Sometimes the chemistry is unavoidable. I stepped into the room, the mingled scent of my perfume and their sweat pressing in. Chemistry is easy to avoid unless you want it to happen. Daniel took another step toward me, but I moved back. Not tonight, I said. You take your things and get out. Emma, I won't repeat myself. Sophie leaned against the wall, adjusting her bra strap in a way that was slow, calculated, meant to draw the eye. Emma, I know this hurts, but Daniel, he's been lonely. I barked a short, humorless laugh. Lonely? In my life? I make his coffee every morning. I sleep next to him every night. And you think you're the cure for loneliness? Daniel tried again. It's not just about sex. So there was sex? My voice cracked, sharp and loud. He froze. Sophie's gaze slid to him, then back to me, a smirk just ghosting her lips. She deserves to know the truth, she murmured loud enough for me to hear. I stared at her. Oh, I'll get the truth, but not from you. She took a step closer, her heels clicking on the floor. Emma, you're beautiful, but you don't see him anymore. You talk to me about your fights, your problems, your dry spells. You've told me more about his needs than he's ever told you. I know him better than you do now. I understand him. The words landed like a punch. And suddenly, I saw it Every conversation over wine after a long day, every time I'd vented about Daniel, every moment I'd thought Sophie was my safe place. I had handed her the blueprint to my marriage. She hadn't just stolen. I'd opened the door and given her the map. I forced a smile that tasted like blood. Then I guess you'll understand when I say this. Get the hell out of my house. The next minutes blurred into a flurry of noise. Drawers opening, zippers rasping, the thud of a suitcase on the floor. Their voices dropped to a frantic whisper, but I caught fragments plans to talk later, and Sophie saying something about keeping things quiet for now. As Sophie passed me on her way out, she paused, leaning in close enough that her perfume cut through the damp air. "He kisses me the way he used to kiss you," she whispered, voice syrupy, long, and deep. "Thought you should know." I met her gaze without blinking. "Keep it. You'll need it when my lawyer's done with you." The door shut behind them. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, alive, wrapping around me like smoke. I should have gone to wash my hands, but instead I walked straight to the kitchen table where my laptop sat. A few clicks into our shared business email account, and there it was. Sophie's emails to Westin Hotels, CCing Daniel, revising the proposal I had spent weeks building. The branding, the color palettes, the floral concept, all mine, stripped of my name and replaced with Greenhouse and Vine, listing Sophie Bennett and Daniel Hart as founders. The more I read, the colder I got. I picked up my phone and dialed Ava Martinez, 35, family lawyer, friend since college, and the only person I trusted to handle this. "Ava, I need you at 9 a.m. Separation papers, and I want a full check on our joint accounts." "Jesus, Emma, are you okay?" "I will be," I said. "They won't." I spent the next half hour pulling every important document from the safe. Passports, marriage certificate, property deeds, bank statements. My hands didn't shake. My mind was already dividing tomorrow into two battles, one in Ava's office, the other at Weston's 11 a.m. meeting, where I'd walk in alone with my original pitch in hand. The rain outside tapped against the kitchen window like it was marking time. I went to the glass, looking out at the wet street. Somewhere in this city, Daniel was sitting in a Marriott room, probably scrolling through excuses. Sophie was wherever she went when she wasn't with me, maybe replaying tonight in her head, convincing herself it was meant to happen. I didn't care. What I cared about was this. She thought she understood Daniel because I'd trusted her, because I'd told her about the little cracks in my marriage, thinking she was helping me patch them. She didn't just take advantage, she studied us. And that, I realized, was her real skill. The storm outside was loud, but the one building inside me was silent, precise, and when I was ready, it was going to break. And when it did, neither of them would see it coming. The rain in Seattle hadn't stopped, but it had changed its tone, no longer the steady background music of last night, but coming in sudden bursts, slapping the windows like it wanted to wake me up and push me forward. I poured a mug of black coffee with no sugar. The bitterness filled my mouth and sharpened my mind into something cold and clear. I hadn't cried last night, not because I was naturally strong. When your heart gets cut deep enough, tears turn into blades. And right now I needed blades, not water. I opened my notebook, flipped to a fresh page, and wrote at the top, "Strip the paint, see the wood." Then I noted the date, the time, the tasks. While the pen was still on paper, my phone buzzed, a text from Ava. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. Bring everything you have. I replied, on my way. At 9, I stepped into Ava's office on the 16th floor, overlooking Lake Union. Her reception area was modest, a fern in the corner, the faint scent of lemon polish. Ava 35, small frame, hair pulled low, eyes like measuring tape slid a stack of printed pages toward me. "Last night you mentioned Greenhouse and Vine," she began, straight to the point. "I ran it through the state registry. GV LLC was registered 6 months ago. Owners, Sophie Bennett and Daniel Hart." I leaned back, hearing the sweep of the second hand on the wall clock. 6 months ago, exactly when Daniel had told me I should attend a florist conference in Oregon for 3 days to expand my network, and Sophie had insisted, "Don't worry, I'll handle the shop." And here, Ava continued, turning the page, is the mailing address for GVA PO Box at Postal Unit 311. Filing submitted by D. Hart, notarized the same day you were in Oregon. "And the initials SC you saw scribbled on the margin of your property papers last night," she added, "matches SC Ventures, a small angel fund under Samuel Crane." I found a preliminary term sheet in Sophie's private Google Drive. Your access was removed. I smiled thinly. So it's not just an affair. It's asset separation under the cover of angel investment. Exactly, Ava said, and it's intellectual property theft if they're using your concept. But you need a chain of evidence, Emma. Not just feelings. Today you gather everything you can, receipts, access logs, cameras, calendars, anything that proves they were together in windows where you can prove you weren't. Give me 48 hours before filing for separation, I said. I want them to take a step back when they see the subpoena. Don't blow up early, Ava warned. Focus on documenting. You don't need to win in one day, you need to win correctly. I understand, I told her. And this time, I won't give them warning. Back at the building, I didn't go straight upstairs. I stopped at the security desk where Hector was on night shift carryover, nursing a cup of coffee. Morning, Miss Hart. Morning, Hector. I need to ask about entry logs for the service elevator over the last few weeks. Any late night holds? Anyone familiar? He hesitated, shifting in his seat. We're not supposed to give residents logs without management's request. I didn't push. Instead, I reached into my bag and placed a small discount voucher for a special bouquet he liked, along with a handwritten card. To Elena, wishing you a gentle birthday. His eyes softened. He lowered his voice. I can't print the logs, but I can tell you what I saw. For the last 2 months, after 11:30 p.m., a woman wearing a baseball cap, long coat, and deep red heels. She never takes the guest elevators. Daniel Hart lets her in through the service door, using a MasterCard. Red heels, I repeated softly. Sophie had a pair of blood-red Louboutins. We once joked they were the color of Napa wine. Hector went on. Twice she left around 6:10 a.m. wearing an oversized men's shirt, holding her coat. Another time, a gray Lexus with Washington plates, CLN78, came into the garage. Plate was blurry, but the frame read Green Lake Auto. Rare to see. Thank you, Hector. If you want still shots from the maintenance dock, camera management rarely checks that feed talk to Mr. Patel on the evening shift. He likes peonies, Hector added. I'll bring a whole bunch, I told him. Upstairs, I opened the recycle bin Daniel had left in the cupboard. Inside were crumpled Uber receipts. 12:43 a.m. from Hart and Dawson LLP to Maxwell Apartments. 3:06 a.m. From Maxwell back to my address. A wine receipt. Castello di Amarosa. Tuscany tasting flight. Napa memory collection. A cork fell out, still smelling of vanilla. Napa. I remembered Daniel whispering that exact word into Sophie's ear last night. I powered up the home router. Daniel had changed the admin password months ago, but I knew his habits. Our wedding date plus an exclamation point. On the second try, I was in. The system log listed every device that had connected. iPhone, DH, MacBook, Emma, Apple TV, Living, and there, Bennett iPhone. Anonymous name, but the MAC address matched the one Sophie used when she airdropped me a mood board 3 months ago. Connection times, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays, always, after 11 p.m. A routine, a pair. On the smart television, I opened the AirPlay history. Sophie's iPhone had streamed to it multiple times, all from a playlist called Midnight Jazz, Slow Only. I don't listen to slow jazz at night. I listened to Rain, someone else had been listening, many nights, in my living room. While printing bank statements, a Google Calendar notification popped up. Daniel's shared calendar had an entry. Client intake, Redwood Room, 11:30 a.m. Thursday. Client intake was his code for civil case meetings. But the Redwood Room wasn't a conference space at his firm. It was the bar at the Palladian Hotel, all red lighting and velvet booths. I clicked Suggest Another Time. The system asked, send to D Hart at and Sophie, be at. My chest went still. He'd invited her on his business calendar and forgotten to disable auto suggestions. I didn't send. I took a screenshot. In the afternoon, I knocked on my neighbor Mr. Thompson's door. He was on the balcony feeding sparrows. Mr. Thompson, do you remember hearing anything from my place late at night last week? He hesitated, then sighed. I may be old, but I'm not deaf. There was laughter, and glasses clinking. I looked through my binoculars. A woman with a low braid, wearing a white robe, came out onto your balcony at 6 in the morning. Oversized men's shirt to mid-thigh. I thought it was you, but she stood differently. You never put your hand on your hip like that. Back in my kitchen, I checked the glasses on the shelf. One, inverted on the rack, had a faint blue-red lipstick print, Sophie's shade. At 7, I brought a bouquet of peonies to the desk for Mr. Patel. I need stills from the maintenance stock camera. About 3 weeks ago, after 11:30 p.m., I'm working with a lawyer. No one has to know you helped me. He glanced around and whispered, "Come back in 10 minutes. I can't print." But the USB on the maintenance monitor sometimes gets loose. He winked. 15 minutes later, he handed me a cheap flash drive. "Return it by tonight. Flowers stay fresh," he said with a half smile. The drive contained 4 images: a woman in a baseball cap, long coat, deep red heels, carrying a canvas tote-printed vine, green partially obscured, a man's arm wearing a Hamilton watch, Daniels, a blurry gray Lexus plate, CLN 78, and at dawn, the woman leaving in an oversized men's shirt, low braid. I zoomed on the tote vine, green, a prototype for Greenhouse and Vine's branding. Later, scrolling Instagram, I searched Palladian and Redwood Room, filtering for newest posts. A small foodie account had posted a carousel of best bars for a secret meet. In the 4th photo, blurred in the background, was a man in a white shirt with a Hamilton watch leaning toward a woman in a white dress, her face turned away. Zooming in, I saw it. The tiny Cafe au Lait spot near her collarbone. Sophie had once mentioned she hated it, but others found it sexy. I remembered because she'd shown me during a bridesmaid fitting. A detail too specific to be coincidence. I sent Ava the screenshot with a note. Not their post, background of someone else's. Proves same place, same time if cross-matched with logs and receipts. Ava replied, "Keep it. It fits the mosaic." In the storage closet by the kitchen, I pulled out a bin labeled Christmas, Daniel's handwriting. Inside, instead of holiday decor, were flat boxes containing a printed draft of brand narrative, Greenhouse and Vine, thick cotton business cards, Pantone swatches of Old World Green, and a hotel key fob marked 23 Farad. Extended stay suite at the Palladian. Also, a delivery slip from Harbor Print and Press signed by S. Bennett with a note. Deliver after hours, 10:15 p.m. Use service entrance. At 5:30, my phone pinged. An email from Daniel. "Redwood tomorrow, keycard, sent to my Gmail." The body read, "Bring the 23 Farad fob. SC needs us to keep a low profile until the wire hits next week. I'll leave the client intake on my calendar. You know the time. Wear the white one." D. He'd meant it for Sophie, but autocomplete had chosen me. I forwarded it to Ava with the subject, "Missent. Smoking gun." She called immediately. "Don't reply. Save the raw header. I can subpoena if needed. You're sitting on gold. I'll keep Kiet. And what are you doing at 11:30 tomorrow?" "I'll go," I said, "but I won't confront them. I'll take what I need." The next day, I walked into the Redwood Room at 11:20, in a sand-colored trench coat over a deep green dress, hair in a low bun. I sat at table 5 near the corner booth I knew they favored. My recorder was in my bag, already running. At 11:32, Daniel walked in white shirt, gray tie. At 11:35, Sophie arrived, white dress hugging her frame, low braid, deep red heels. She glanced at the bar mirror like an actress checking her light. No kiss, just a light brush of hands, enough to make the blood heat. They sat. Daniel's voice lowered. "SC says next week for the wire. After Weston, we'll talk to Emma. I'll say it's new. I didn't want to hurt her. Just a moment of weakness." Sophie laughed silently. A moment? 6 months? Or a year? "Sophie?" "I'm kidding," she said, tapping her glass. "Just keep quiet until the wire drops. And don't let her get near my pitch." "She was tough last night," Daniel muttered. Called her lawyer right away. "I'm at the Marriott." Sophie twirled the 23 Farad fob in her fingers. "Tonight, 23 Farad? I left things there already." "Don't overuse it," Daniel warned. "If she digs, she'll find it. We need clean hands." Sophie's tone turned honeyed. "And don't look at her like you love her anymore. I get jealous." "I've never loved anyone like you," Daniel said. "Don't lie badly," she smiled. "I know you. She used to be your home. Now, I'm the room you hide in." "And if we get caught," Sophie added, "blame it all on me. I can take being the villain. You keep the good husband image. Women like Emma. They believe a pretty story if you tell it well enough." "You're ruthless," Daniel said. "Sharp," Sophie corrected. "You have to be to survive." I rose as if going to the restroom, passing close behind them. I didn't look at their faces, just set my phone down for a second so the AirTag, in my case, pinged the location. When I returned, they were penciling in dates: Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. The familiar nights. I left before them, the recorder heavy in my bag, my chest filled not with grief, but with precision. Back home, I saved the audio file, clipped the clearest lines, and filed it alongside the USB stills. Router logs, auto-suggest calendar shot, background Instagram photo, missent email, Uber receipts, print delivery slip, and the 23 farad fob, all locked in an external drive labeled innocuously with a cloud backup under a fake name. I called Ava. I've got it. Their voices, their schedule, their things. Good. Do you want an ambush or a slow peel? A slow peel. But before peeling, I want them to walk into the fire themselves. By night, Daniel came to the apartment alone. I stood in the dark kitchen. He turned on the living room light and froze. I thought you'd... Gone? I forgot to take something. I pointed to the Tahoe photo frame. I want a white wall. Emma, listen, you have 15 minutes. Leave the fob on the counter. I don't have it. Funny, I said I'm holding a 23 farad fob right now. Should I return it for you? He exhaled sharply. Emma, don't. I hung up on his voice in my head. Whoever wanted to play the villain could have the role. I had my own part to play, and it was bigger. That night, as rain whispered against the balcony, I wrote the first line in my plan. Cut every rope they think is holding them up. And when they finally realized those ropes were mine to begin with, it would be too late. The Thursday morning sky over Seattle was still damp from last night's rain, but light was finally breaking through in pale streaks. I stood by the window, a mug of coffee warming my hands, watching droplets slide down the glass in slow, deliberate lines. Today would be the first day I loosed an arrow. Not the killing shot, not yet, but sharp enough to pierce their defenses and force them to show more of their hand. My phone buzzed. Ava, are you ready? She asked. Ready, I said. We start today. I've already sent a cease and desist to SC Ventures, she told me. It warns they're investing in a brand using stolen intellectual property. If SC plays it safe, they'll freeze the transfer. That's gonna rattle Sophie and Daniel. Good, I said. When the money gets held up, they'll start pointing fingers. I sat down at my desk, laptop open. The folder named Case EH sat there like a sealed vault, each piece of evidence labeled and time-stamped. Today I'd used just a small fraction enough to make an impact, but not enough to reveal the scope of my arsenal. I drafted a new email from a freshly created, untraceable account. My tone was polite, measured, but cold. Dear Mr. Samuel Crane, I believe you should review your pending investment into Greenhouse and Vine. As a third party, I have information indicating the entirety of this brand's concept, color scheme, and marketing plan has been lifted directly from another company, Glasshouse Florals. Attached are side-by-side comparisons and dated materials proving the original concept predates Greenhouse and Vine. If your investment becomes linked to intellectual property theft, your reputation will suffer severe consequences. From someone who once believed in justice. I didn't sign it. When I hit send, there was no rush of triumph, only the calm, deliberate stillness of someone placing the first stone on a chessboard and knowing the game had officially begun. It took less than 2 hours for Ava to text, "Good news, SC Ventures responded. They're putting the transfer on hold until all legal matters are clarified." That means Sophie and Daniel will have to explain to each other. Or start suspecting each other. I let out a slow breath and smiled. The first ember had caught. I knew Sophie wouldn't let this pass quietly. She would try to reach me publicly if she could mask it as civility, or privately if she thought it safer. I decided to give her that opening. From the Glasshouse Florals Facebook page, I posted, Glasshouse Florals is proud of its original ideas and exclusive creative concepts for our clients. We always protect our intellectual property. I didn't name anyone, but anyone with a guilty conscience would feel the sting. And right on cue, less than an hour later, Sophie called. Emma, can we talk? She said, her voice attempting warmth. About what? I asked. You know, your post. People might take it the wrong way. I didn't mention any names, I replied. If someone takes it the wrong way, maybe they have their reasons. Emma, don't be like this. We used to be friends. Yes, I said quietly. Used to be. I let the pause linger, then added, Lower, Sophie. There's one thing you might want to remember. Cameras sometimes keep recording, even when someone thinks they've turned them off. I could hear her breathing change, a sharp hit she couldn't mask. I didn't elaborate. I simply hung up. That little jab wouldn't take her down, but it would cost her some sleep. Later that afternoon, I made a deliberate stop at an upscale flower shop downtown, the kind Sophie liked to visit for inspiration. I wore a black suit, hair pinned neatly back, heels clicking on the polished floor. As I stepped inside, there she was, standing at the counter with a Weston events coordinator I recognized. Her expression flickered when she saw me, but she quickly recovered into a social smile. "Emma, what a coincidence," she said. "Yes, truly coincidental," I replied. I turned to the Weston staffer, extending my hand. "Hello, I'm Emma Hart, owner of Glass House Florals. My company's done work with Weston before." He smiled, shaking my hand warmly. Sophie tried to wedge herself into the exchange. "Emma's been busy with her own projects," she said lightly, "so Greenhouse and Vine will be handling—" "Oh, my projects are still Glass House Florals I cut in, and I don't recall ever transferring any contracts." The air between us tightened like a pulled string. I could feel Sophie holding her smile in place, but her eyes flickered. I knew she'd repeat this exchange to Daniel tonight, probably lacing it with frustration and anxiety. That evening, I kept my promise to Mr. Patel and brought him a bouquet of peonies. He smiled in thanks, but before I could say a word, he leaned closer. "Miss Hart, I found another clip," he said. "Last week, the gray Lexus CLN 78 pulled into the loading dock at 11:42 p.m. Two people got out, carrying a cardboard box and a bouquet." "A bouquet?" I repeated. "Yeah. Lush-colored peonies. Not in season, must have been greenhouse imports. And they went in through the service entrance, stayed for about 3 hours. The woman was carrying the bouquet when they entered, but she didn't have it when they left." I jotted the detail immediately. Lush peony wedding symbol. Sophie had called this the signature flower of GV, which meant they'd use my flowers for their branding shoot. That gave me an idea. I called a photographer friend and asked him to pose as a client seeking wedding florals for a magazine feature, specifically wanting Old World green and blush peonies. I made sure word of this opportunity would reach Sophie through a former employee of mine. If she took the bait, she'd walk straight into providing proof that GV was using my concept. 2 days later, my friend texted. Sophie had agreed to supply the flowers and scheduled a delivery to his studio. I gave him a potted plant with a concealed camera to capture the entire exchange. That night, another gift fell into my lap. A text from Daniel. "Tonight, 23 Farad. Bring the remaining Napa bottle. I'll put on the jazz you like." He'd done it again, sent it to me instead of Sophie. This time, I didn't just save the message. I replied, "You must have sent this to the wrong person." Not long after, he called, his voice tight. "Emma, I'm sorry, that was for a client." "A client who wears a white dress and deep red heels?" I asked. "Emma, don't. You'll have more to apologize for." But not to me. I ended the call and saved the recording. The next morning, Ava emailed. "Heard Sophie and Daniel argued at the Palladian. Source from the front desk says Sophie left first, looking furious." I pictured it cracks forming between them, suspicion creeping in. Sophie could be wondering if Daniel's the one leaking information. Daniel could suspect Sophie's been careless. Either way, the fracture had begun. It was time for the next push. I prepared a letter to Weston, requesting they pause all dealings with Greenhouse and Vine until the intellectual property dispute was resolved. I attached documentation proving that Old World Green and Blush Peony had been registered and in use by Glass House Florals prior to GV's launch. If Weston froze their contract, it would be the second direct hit to their income stream. I didn't need to win outright yet. I just needed them to start bleeding. When I hit send, I knew the game had shifted from defense to offense, and this time I wasn't going to fire just one arrow. I would keep firing until there was nowhere left for them to hide. The news came 3 days after I had sent the letter to Weston. They would be temporarily suspending cooperation with Greenhouse and Vine until questions of intellectual property were resolved. It meant the largest source of Sophie and Daniel's revenue had just been cut off. I could almost hear the fracture forming between them. But waiting for it to deepen wasn't enough. I wanted to accelerate the collapse. That night, I created an anonymous number and typed out a short message for Sophie. "Caution, Daniel's meeting someone at 23 Farad this Saturday night. It's not you." I hit send without a signature, no details, just the seed. She wouldn't be able to ignore it. An hour later, from the same number, I crafted one for Daniel. "Careful with Sophie, she's trying to sell GV's concepts to someone else." I didn't need either of them to believe completely. I just needed to plant suspicion. The next morning, I staged another move. At a cafe downtown, one I knew Sophie frequented, I forgot a slim folder on the counter where she would notice. Inside was a fake contract between Glasshouse Florals and a luxury hotel chain, complete with a concept named Imperial Green, a subtle upgrade from Old World Green. I wanted her to see it and imagine I was gearing up for a much larger strike. By afternoon, Ava called me, half amused. "You guessed right," she said. "Sophie's been sniffing around." She called someone in Weston's purchasing department asking whether they'd heard of this Imperial Green project. "And?" I asked. They hadn't, of course, but the fact she asked tells us she's rattled. "Good," I said. "The more panicked she is, the more mistakes she'll make." That evening, my phone lit with another surprise, Mr. Patel's number. "Miss Hart," he said softly, "I think you should see this. Last night, close to 1 a.m., Daniel showed up at the building's service entrance. He wasn't with Sophie. Blonde woman, tall. They carried 2 boxes of wine. You're certain it wasn't Sophie?" I asked. "Positive, I saved the clip for you." When I opened the file later, I felt my stomach twist, not from jealousy, but from the sheer opportunity this represented. If Sophie saw this, she wouldn't just doubt him, she would explode. The next afternoon, I orchestrated another accident. I knew Sophie often passed through the downtown Galleria around 4. I made sure to be there, phone in hand. When she brushed past, pretending not to notice me, I tilted the screen just enough for her to see. Her eyes widened at the frozen image of Daniel with the blonde boxes in hand. "That's Daniel?" she whispered. I shrugged. "I don't know. You tell me." Before she could recover, I slid the phone back into my pocket and walked away, leaving the picture to sear itself into her thoughts. I didn't need to wait long for the fallout. 3 days later, Ava texted, "Source says Sophie and Daniel had a massive fight at the office. She screamed, 'Do you think I'm stupid?' Then slammed the door and left. Daniel stayed, threw a glass at the wall. I closed my eyes, picturing it, their carefully polished facade cracking in front of their own employees. But satisfaction wasn't enough. This was only the opening chord. I needed a symphony of ruin. So I baited another trap. I reached out to a lifestyle journalist I trusted and told her, carefully, about a new floral brand in Seattle, accused of copying another's concepts. I never named names, but I sent her side-by-side images. Glasshouse Floral's registered Old World Green palette alongside Greenhouse and Vine's suspiciously similar branding. I knew this particular journalist had interviewed Sophie last year. That connection would make the impact sharper. 3 days later, the article appeared online. Its headline was deliberately coy. "Hot new wedding, floral brand faces copycat concerns." No names, but the blurred images accompanying the piece were recognizable to anyone in the industry. Predictably, Sophie called Daniel the moment it went live. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know how it went. She would accuse him of letting things leak. He would accuse her of being careless. That evening, my phone rang again. Daniel's name glowed on the screen. For a moment, I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. "Emma," he said, his voice tight, controlled rage under the surface. "What do you want? Money, or is it just to destroy us?" I kept my tone even. "I want justice. Something you and Sophie both spat on." "You don't understand," he said quickly. "Sophie, she... Don't blame her," I cut him off. "You made your choices, and now you'll pay for them." Before he could answer, I hung up. The following week, the dominoes fell exactly as I intended. SC Ventures officially withdrew their investment, citing legal uncertainties. Weston declared they were suspending all contracts with Greenhouse and Vine indefinitely. In less than 10 days, Sophie and Daniel had lost their 2 largest clients. I learned from a former employee of mine, now working reluctantly under Sophie, that the office atmosphere was poisonous. Sophie slept on the office couch some nights. Daniel disappeared for entire evenings. They barely spoke, except to argue. The walls were closing in. And yet for me, this was still only the prelude. Watching them lose contracts and fight each other was satisfying, but it wasn't final. Not yet. They had stripped me of trust, of friendship, of love. They had built their empire on my stolen dreams. They still hadn't paid enough. The final act was coming, the strike that would strip away not just their business, but the masks they wore, until the world saw them for what they truly were. And this time, I wouldn't settle for whispers or innuendo. I would make sure their betrayal was exposed in broad daylight, with nowhere left to hide. The silence before the storm always has a texture to it, thick, humming like the air before lightning splits the sky. That was what I felt as I prepared the final act. Sophie and Daniel had already been stripped of their contracts and their clients, but they were still clinging to one thing: image. They were the visionary couple of Seattle's floral scene. They had media friends, glossy magazine profiles, staged photo shoots where Sophie laughed with her head tilted just right and Daniel stood beside her like a polished statue. That facade was their last shield, and I intended to break it in full daylight. The opportunity came in the form of the Seattle Bloom Expo, a major event for designers, hotels, and luxury planners. Greenhouse and Vine had been scheduled for a centerpiece showcase months ago, back when their future still looked golden. Against all odds, they hadn't canceled. I imagined they believed showing up would restore some credibility, reassure people they weren't collapsing, or maybe Sophie just couldn't resist the spotlight. Either way, it was perfect. On the morning of the expo, I dressed in a simple black dress, understated but elegant, the kind of dress that let silence do the work. Ava met me outside, her expression taut with excitement. "Are you sure you want to do this in person?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I want them to see me when it happens." Inside, the hall glowed with white lights and towering floral installations. Greenhouse and Vine had constructed a massive arch of cascading roses and peonies, but I could already see it was poorly executed. The flowers were wilting at the edges, a metaphor they didn't even notice. Sophie, in her signature cream suit, was rehearsing a smile in the mirror of her phone. Daniel hovered nearby, whispering something clipped, his jaw tight. When Sophie saw me, her expression cracked for a fraction of a second before she plastered on surprise. "Emma," she said, voice sweetened like poisoned honey, "didn't expect you here. How's business?" "Thriving," I said simply. Daniel glanced at me, his eyes dark with a mixture of guilt and hatred. "You shouldn't be here." "Oh, but I should," I replied softly. "This is exactly where I belong." The showcase began with a small stage presentation. A moderator introduced Sophie as Seattle's floral visionary. She stepped forward, radiating false warmth, speaking about passion and artistry. Daniel joined her midway, adding his rehearsed gravitas. And then it was my turn. I had arranged with the moderator beforehand to present Glasshouse Floral's newest line. When my name was announced, Sophie's face drained. She hadn't expected me to share the same platform. I walked up, carrying a single folder. "Thank you," I said into the microphone, my voice calm but resonant. "I'd like to talk today about integrity in design, about what it means to honor creativity rather than exploit it." The room grew still. Sophie's smile froze. I opened the folder and held up a printed comparison, my registered concept Old World Green alongside Greenhouse and Vine's near-identical campaign. The similarities were undeniable. Gasps rippled through the audience. "This is my concept, protected by copyright," I continued. "You can see it here, registered in 2022. And here, I tapped the other side, is what Greenhouse and Vine presented as their own." Whispers surged. Cameras flashed. Sophie stepped forward, her composure slipping. "That's absurd," she said quickly. "Coincidences happen in creative industries. Emma's just bitter." "Really?" I interrupted. I pulled out a USB drive. "Because on this drive are internal emails from Greenhouse and Vine, drafts, mock-ups, even financial notes sent from Sophie's account. Emails that include my sketches, the same ones I shared with her years ago when she was supposed to be my friend." Sophie's face blanched, Daniel's jaw clenched. "That's a lie!" Sophie snapped. She fabricated, but her voice trembled. The audience saw it. I leaned closer, meeting her eyes. "You knew everything about me, Sophie, because I told you. I trusted you with my struggles, my doubts, my marriage, and you used all of it. That's not coincidence. That's betrayal." Daniel tried to interject, his voice sharp. "Emma, this isn't the place." "This is exactly the place," I said, louder now, so the room could hear. "Because you wanted a stage, Sophie. You wanted recognition, Daniel. And this is the recognition you deserve." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The weight of silence pressed on them. Then questions erupted from reporters, phones shot up recording everything. Sophie's carefully built image cracked right there, under the hot light. But I wasn't finished. I turned to Daniel. "Should I also show them the footage of you sneaking into buildings at 1 a.m. with women who aren't Sophie?" His face went rigid. Sophie's head snapped toward him. "What?" she hissed. "She's lying," Daniel muttered, but his voice lacked force. "Oh, am I?" I asked. "Because the building manager has video. and I think Sophie deserves to see it. In fact, so does everyone here. I signaled Ava, who was waiting near the back. She pressed play on a tablet linked to the projector. Suddenly, the giant screen above us showed Daniel, grainy but unmistakable, carrying boxes of wine with a blonde woman by his side. The audience gasped again. Sophie recoiled as though struck. "You bastard," she whispered. Daniel tried to grab her arm, but she yanked away. "How long? How many?" she demanded. "Sophie, it's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like!" she screamed. "You told me she was nothing, that we were untouchable. And you—" her voice broke. The moderator tried to calm things down, but the scene had already spiraled. Reporters swarmed, microphones shoved forward, flashes strobing. Sophie covered her face with her hand. Daniel cursed under his breath. I stood there, perfectly still, letting the chaos burn itself out. Finally, I leaned into the mic one last time. Integrity matters, loyalty matters, and betrayal has consequences. Greenhouse and Vine built its house on lies. Today, you saw the truth. I set the folder on the podium and walked away. Behind me, Sophie was still shouting, her voice shrill, while Daniel tried in vain to quiet her. Security began ushering the press back, but it was too late. The footage, the comparisons, the collapse, it was all recorded, live streamed, dissected. Outside, Ava caught up with me, eyes wide. "Emma, you destroyed them." "No," I said quietly, watching the flashes still flickering through the glass doors. "They destroyed themselves. I just turned on the lights." That evening, headlines spread across every major outlet. Greenhouse and Vine implodes at Expo. Clips of Sophie's outburst went viral within hours. Daniel's late-night rendezvous played on repeat, with captions like "Seattle's power couple crumbles." By morning, their contracts were finished, their investors gone, their reputation scorched beyond repair. I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, the air damp with early rain, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the naive peace of ignorance, but the hard-earned kind, sharp at the edges. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I simply breathed. They had taken everything from me once, but now, at last, they had nothing left to take. A week after the expo, I opened my phone and the headlines screamed the same story over and over again. Greenhouse and Vine and Freefall, investors pull out completely. Daniel's cheating video spreads at record speed. Sophie Carter, dropped by 3 major brands, faces bankruptcy. Scrolling further down, the comments were brutal. "I used to admire Sophie. Can't believe she stole her best friend's ideas. Daniel's nothing but a fraud, cheated on his wife and his partner. Honestly, Emma was always the talent. Hope she comes back stronger." I skimmed through them without a single triumphant smile. What I felt wasn't victory, it was relief, the kind that lets your lungs expand fully for the first time in years. That afternoon, Ava called me. Her voice bubbled with pride. "Emma, do you see what's happening? Everyone's talking about Glasshouse Florals like it's a symbol of resilience. New clients are pouring in. This is just the beginning." I sat in my small office, surrounded by fresh sketches pinned across the walls. Sunlight filtered through the glass, casting golden lines across my desk. No more sleepless nights of rage. No more endless days doubting myself. Meanwhile, Sophie and Daniel were sinking into the quicksand they created. Word was that Daniel had moved out of their luxury condo and into a dingy rental. Sophie tried a few desperate PR interviews, but every appearance only attracted more vitriol. The spotlight they loved had turned into a furnace. Ava's words lingered in my ear. "You won, Emma. But more than that, you found yourself again." She was right. Their downfall wasn't my greatest achievement. My real triumph was standing back up, facing the wreckage, and choosing to move forward. The new contracts, the fresh clients, the trust I was earning back from people who once doubted me, those were the bricks of the foundation I was building now. I lifted a cup of hot tea, staring out the window. Rain had started to fall, soft and steady. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. This time, the rain felt like cleansing. And I knew my story. The real story was only just beginning.